If you've listened to this podcast for any length of time, if you've followed me at all, if you are on a journey to befriend your body, you have probably heard of embodiment. And today's guest is very special. We have Mr. Embodiment himself, aka Mark Walsh. I think you're going to get a lot from this episode. It surprised me for many reasons. And what I will say is that we discuss some behind the scenes stuff that a lot of people aren't willing to talk about. We bust some myths, share some misconceptions, and have a really insightful conversation about what it means to embody middle age. Enjoy. You are listening to Adulting with Ebony. Season 7 brings together neurodiversity, human design and embodiment so that Gen X or millennial misfits and late diagnosed neurospices become empowered, embodied and fully expressed. This is the show where I actively encourage you to feel your feelings rather than think them. Glow up, not grow up, and become full of yourself. Because who the fuck else should you be full of? Each week, I have real and raw conversations about what it takes to be fully resourced and have happy, healthy, intimate relationships as a dopamine-deficient adult wanting to create a better future by being the change that you want to see in the world. I am your host, Ebony Allard, aka Ebony Alchemy, a late diagnosed ADHDer, combined type and Asperger's in case you like specifics, artist, mystic, and self-actualization facilitator. I'm an international award-winning multiple brain integration technique master coach with special interest in embodied human design for neurodivergence. I've been in the personal development, creativity, and entrepreneurship spaces all of my life, and as a 5'2" emotional manifesting generator with a left angle cross of distraction, I am here to help you know what to trust and what to tune out. Each week, I share relatable, practical ways that mean you get to take less responsibility for more reward and safely remove your camouflage for more belonging, acceptance, and fulfillment. Ready? Let's go. I'm really excited about this conversation. We have known each other a long time, but I realized recently that maybe I've known you, but you haven't known me. And that was a weird experience because it's normally the other way around.
Yeah, parasocial relationship, they call it. I get it quite often. People know the social media or the conferences, and then balances out really quickly, is my sense, as long as you're not a dick. Like generally, like people just chat and they're nice, and pretty soon it just feels normal.
Yeah, I think for me it was because we actually met many, many years ago. And my experience of that event was such that I was like, how can he not remember that? And that was a really good lesson for me in that we all have such a different memory of or experience of the same situations, depending on what is going on for us intellectually, physically, emotionally, spiritually at that time. And it's, yeah, really, really fascinating, particularly because what I wanted to talk to you about is your relationship with embodiment, right? Like Mr. Embodiment. And now it's a buzzword. Everyone uses it all the time. But when you
Sorry about
started, but when you started out, it wasn't
No.
at all.
No, I mean, I knew I was interested in sort of all things body, mind, and different movement practices. What does martial arts and trauma therapy and yoga and meditation? I was just looking for a word to talk about all that stuff without having to say 5 sentences.
Yeah.
And embodiment was a pretty good word. I thought, what, this is great. And then I thought, this is what I want to teach coaches, which is my main work. So I was like, rather than something esoteric, I wanted to, use a word that was kind of already in the normal English lexicon. So I thought embodiment's a good enough word as any. And I kind of realized it's almost like, marketing wise, it's good to kind of be known for something.
Yeah.
And I thought, what, this is what I love anyway. And this word is a pretty good word. So let's just roll with that. I certainly wasn't the first one to use it. I mean, it's been used by all sorts of people forever. But then, through the podcast and the books and the conferences, it kind of, I think I moved along something that was already happening. I was kind of early, as it were, on the trend. And then, like trauma and mindfulness and these, other words, it's now got to the point where it's sort of almost a bit overused. and it's put in front of everything. But that being said, like, we are in certain circles, aren't we? If you're in conscious dance world or coaching world, it might become normalized, but I'm not sure how much the average person in the street has still heard it. So I occasionally get a bit sick of the word myself, and I always get asked like what it is, and it's like chapter 1 in my book and like lesson 1 on my courses, and because I define it fairly rigorously, and I think sadly some of that rigor hasn't trended.
Oh, you know what? I'm not going to ask you any of those because I feel like my audience are au fait with what embodiment is. What I actually wanted to ask you about was this, because you were ahead of the curve, right? Like you, as far as I'm concerned, kind of caught a curve, and not only that, were really, really good at marketing and really, really good at understanding where to be, what to make videos on, what to talk about, there's been a lot of really good marketing from your end. Like I've always been appreciative of the way that you market and how you are able to do that. And you're one of the very few people that I'm aware of who balance their marketing with their skill and talent to do.
Yeah, so I'm not just a shit person with a marketing department.
Well, lots of people
No, they are. They exist.
very, very good at marketing, and then you go buy their course and they're not really embodied, and they don't really, do you know what I mean? And so I'm curious whether, because I haven't done the Embodiment Facilitator course, or whether that's something that you also teach in this balance of presentation versus like being in it.
Yeah. Well, first of all, I'm horrible at marketing. I'm just less horrible than the average hippie. So I'm the one-eyed man in the land of the blind. So I'm definitely not a marketing expert. I mean, if I talk to actual marketing experts or like, tech guys that we sometimes bring as consultants, they can't believe how bad I am at it. But it's a field which doesn't have much sort of marketing skill generally, because people kind of look down on it. And I understand why. I didn't have it in my family, for example. My family are all teachers and mad people and soldiers, and there's no business people in my family at all. And when I started my business like 20 years ago, whatever, I had some American teachers who were reasonable at marketing, so that helped. The Americans tend to be better at it than Brits. They're less embarrassed by it. There's a lot of interesting psychology and class stuff and all sorts of things in it. So I had some American teachers, which helped, but mostly I was terrible at it. It was just trial and error. And I sort of bought my first cheap suit and laptop and stuff 20 years ago and made a lot of mistakes and just did some things that flopped. Like you've heard of some of the things that have done well, but you haven't heard of all the things that have done badly, right? Like I've failed many times.
Well, and that's the thing, right? Like, so particularly at that time, we've been in business the same length of time, and you have done two things which I didn't do. You stuck with a thing.
Yep. Consistency.
Yeah. And like with the same thing, right? Like I've just called it 1,000 different things, and also implemented what those people told you. Whereas I was one of those hippies that was like, I can't do that. It's taking people, like, all, really faced, didn't follow through for a long time. Now I do. Now, I'm out in the world, but there was definitely in my 20s and 30s like such a fear of being perceived a certain way, or not being understood, and all of that stuff really gets in the way as well.
We bring a lot of vulnerability to it with marketing, because you're really standing on a chair and saying, hey guys, come buy this thing. And I said this cultural baggage around that, which as a British person, Irish background, then that's huge. I started getting a little bit better at it, a lot through trial and error. There's some people I listened to, Julia Chanteray in Brighton, Tad Hargrave, Marketing for Hippies in Canada, George K. I realized you could sort of do some marketing without being a scumbag. There were some sort of values-led ways to do it. You've got to really look to find those people, though. Like Tad, for example, is great, but
but he's also just like such a softie,
he's lovely. Stayed at my house. He's exactly what you think. He's exactly what you think. Lovely guy, taller than you think, but lovely. Tad stayed at mine a few months ago when I was in town. I started teaching students a little bit of that. So I do a coaching course or a course for yogis, whatever. And at the end, I just say, you know what, let's do 2 or 3 hours on like business and ethical marketing. embodied marketing, and sometimes that I get like a standing ovation for that part because it was so like rare for anyone to do that part. So I often do that with men. It's not a main part of our sort of main embodied coaching course now, but it's a little bit in that. And then I mentor people with that. And when I mentor people, I'd say 50% of what they want to talk about is how to make a living. Because I didn't have any, I'm not from a rich family. I didn't have a rich husband. I don't have any other source of income. So when I started out, I was living in sharing a house that smelled of cat wee in Cheap Street in Brighton. And I was like, I need to pay the rent. So I was like, you know what? I've just got to learn about this. And then I kind of found a way that wasn't totally disgusting. And, for example, like a podcast, right? Like people tell me, oh, your podcast is great marketing. I'm like, I just like to talk to nice people. Like, and if it puts my name out there, brilliant. That's a secondary thought.
And I think there's also this really big misconception that having a large audience means a large amount of money in your bank account. The amount of people that I coach who I have, reach out to because I'm like, don't get me wrong, you've got a large audience. I don't think you're making money. Can I help you? Because they are not the same thing. And I wish, like I have a relatively small audience, but I do all right, thank you. And, I've been through, I'm not going to, been through, the listeners will know, I've been through 3 businesses in the last 20 years. So there's been highs and there's been lows, but I've really learned that the money isn't everything. But, it's easy to make it, it's easy to lose it, easy come, easy go. But I think that there is this misnomer that just because you have a large audience, you must be rich.
Yeah, people sometimes are surprised when they find out I'm, renting a 3-bedroom house kind of thing and not living in a mansion, or don't turn up in a Ferrari or whatever. Because, the platforms are quite huge. We've done events, 500,000 people, millions of downloads on the podcast, the YouTube channel, Instagram's okay, lists are pretty big. So it's like all those things are helpful, but it's also business models. Like I've run 3 different business models. One was independent with a sort of part-time PA. And then we had this big expansion with the Embodiment Conference and basically turned into a tech company. I was employing 25 people. It was absolutely miserable. I actually got in loads of debt doing that in the end. And now we've scaled back to a small business, sort of, small business, but probably medium, like 5 employees, like medium size in this sector. And that's much happier. People know each other, but I still have to make like 30-40 grand a month just to pay everyone else's salaries and bills. And let's say you've got like my list, for example, it costs me 2 grand a month just to have that list before I do anything with it.
People don't talk about this, and I think it's so important. Like at the height of my last business, I had to turn over 7.5 grand a month before I paid myself. And the pressure of that, for somebody who at the time was really working on, my own personal growth, was really backing away, leaning into my feminine energy, really trying to do less and be more, really wanted to attract a relationship, was trying to balance this, like, how do I be the man in my business and the woman at home? Like that, all of that is such a head fuck anyway, right? And then this, like, you must make 7.5 grand, otherwise you're going to let people down, it was a kind of inevitable that it broke down and started again and allowed me to like create something I don't feel pressure from. But people don't talk about it enough, and I wish they did.
Yeah, what is success? I've had it all. So I've had friends, quite a lot of sort of my kind of lefty hippie friends got quite resentful when I was successful, and they ascribed it to other reasons sometimes, but they basically were friends forever. And then as soon as I kind of made it, they were like, which was an overnight success with 10 years of hard work. They kind of were like, all of a sudden found reasons not to be friends with me. And I've like, but I've always been a dickhead, like where's this coming from? I've had cancel attempts, like can't always relax. Like if I go to a conscious dance, for example, there'll definitely be someone who wants to introduce himself and say hi. And normally people are lovely, but I remember one time I was grieving the death of my friend on the dance floor by just dancing and shaking it all off and, dancing grief. And someone kind of stopped me and started talking to me in the middle of the dance floor. And I was just like, please don't do that. So this, and as you say, the pressures financially, sometimes the complexity of it is just a head fuck.
And all of the like what you just talked to there, right? Like the projections. So the place where we met was at a dance event that was a big one that was run by my dad, and I experienced that thing so much that I hid for years, like energetically really hid for years, because if I went to the dance, every time I went to dance at my dad's stuff, people were looking at me. Oh, she must be really good. She's his daughter. You know,
Oh, I
oh
see. Because of
God, or
family.
like, and people would like call me out, and there would be, I could never just dance. It was always a show, and my
Yeah.
life felt like a show anyway, because autism, ADHD, undiagnosed, but so much of my life was a show anyway. I wanted this one place that was supposed to be a sanctuary, that was supposed to be a place where I was safe because it's my home, because it's my dad.
I didn't actually know you had a
It wasn't.
at the time, but shout out to your dad. Him and Sarah doing great stuff. I haven't danced with them for 10 years at least, but I remember them being really excellent then, and I've danced with a lot of people. So yeah, just shout out to them, top tier teachers.
Well, like, and they are, and neither of them, they don't do rhythms, they don't do conscious dance anymore. They do a lot of moving meditation and
Okay, I'm curious.
meditating yourself. And anyway, not going to talk about them, but, and I love them very dearly, and I will talk about them. And it's not that I won't. And they don't often, yeah, we have had stuff actually around how private they are. And the book that I've written, the podcast that I do, the amount I'm on social media, finding a balance with that actually has been very, very interesting. And again, we come back to this thing, and you mentioned it earlier, of like finding that balance between relationship and your own satisfaction and success and what that means for you versus success out in the world, right? And like finding that line and that balance and learning how to respect other people whilst also respecting yourself and showing up in the way that feels good for you, right?
It's about values, and I was kind of hungry and ambitious when I was young. Again, I think I got that from American teachers, not very British.
Yeah.
And I was always pushing and driving, and that came with a certain cost. And then one, I sort of did as big a thing as you can do in the embodiment world with the Embodiment Conference, 500,000 people in a big event, coached by Gabor Mate, kind of live on air with thousands of people watching. It's all that stuff. And then after that, I just went, oh, that's pretty empty. And now I'm actually just really stressed running this company, and I've got far too many eyes on me, and it's not a good time. I actually, that event, I actually quite regret doing in many ways. So we helped a lot of people at a delicate time when people needed something in COVID.
Yeah.
And then there's other projects like the Ukraine project I did 2 years later. That's actually the one I'm way more proud of. That is just from the heart, and didn't make any money from. I'm kind of known in Ukraine maybe from it, but it's not something that ever kind of was big, in the rest of the world. But that's just one that I'm just really proud of. And but everything comes at a cost. The Ukraine work is dark at times. It was 2 days ago on the phone talking about Bucha massacre, and my team are working there in Ukraine, and it's just dark. Like most people don't ever have to look at that stuff. And I made some of the best friends of my life, and it pulled my understanding of trauma forward, and it just felt a pure thing in many ways to start that charity and do the work there. It's like, I don't know, I've got a book on my desk, right? I've got my books on my desk. I showed my books to someone earlier, and if you've not written a book, it seems like a big deal, but once you've written a book, it's just a book, and it's fine, and it's nice to have written a book, kind of thing. But I don't want to complain either, like I've traveled the world on this stuff. I met my wife in Ukraine years ago. I've just had adventures all over the world. I've been very lucky with who I've had access to and been able to speak to. Like most of the world's top embodiment teachers I've spoken to, and at least hung out with them.
It feels to me, watching you, observing this journey that you've been on, that you've hit the podcast is Adulting with Ebony, right? And it feels to me that you, a year ago, 18 months ago, like hit something of maturity, hit some challenges, hit some, some troubles, some friction, some of the opposite of flow, which has given you the opportunity for a level of deepening maturity, which is becoming really evident in how you relate and how you show up. And I might be spouting absolute nonsense and projecting all over you, but I'd be curious to know if any of that's true and how you feel about it.
Yeah, I mean, assessing one's own maturity is always dangerous. But I mean, I had a couple of big things that cracked me open. One was Ukraine, that was just hardcore, spending time there and supporting the charity from far. One was a breakup with my wife. I'm not really talking about that publicly yet, but that's a big one. Also, it's just kind of like getting the money and the success and then going, well, what is this actually worth? Having lost friends and clearing out some sort of addictive issues that were still there. I sort of had to do a few years of therapy on and kind of coming out the other side of that, and just getting middle-aged, and going, I'm a middle-aged guy now. I've got to wear glasses now, and I've got gray in my beard, and it's like I'm not from warrior to king. There's a sort of transition in age, I think, and middle age is interesting, isn't it? Because you've still got time to do stuff, but your decisions you've made have had real consequences, good and bad.
Yeah.
And some doors are now closed. I'm probably never going to be a ballet dancer, some real doors are closed. And you end up reevaluating one's life and career. And I had a really good hard look at myself. I got some tough feedback for some people as well. And a mixture of all those things combined. I moved to the countryside. I'm living in a much more chill place, and it's in a way it's sort of taking the pressure off. Like I used to be like man on a mission to spread embodiment to the world, and now I'm just a guy who has a job, and I quite like my job, and I think it's a decent job, and I show up to work and teach coaches. It's not quite so messianic or whatever. Now it's just a bit more chill.
I don't know. It also feels like for me there. I also kind of hit that point of I've done the things I said I was going to do. Now
yeah, I did.
Right, like where does it go from here? And some of those things for me of like, I didn't think I'd hit my mid-40s and not be a mum. I didn't think I'd hit my mid-40s not having lived not being in a partnership or relationship that is conventional, or there's lots of things that it's not that I set, like obviously I didn't set out to achieve them, because if I'd set out to achieve them I'd have them. Right, like we don't end up anywhere by accident, but there have been some things where I'm like, wow, okay, what do I want from the rest of my life? I remember waking up on my 42nd birthday, so last year, in a really nice hotel in Spain. I paid for myself to go to this 5-star hotel, and £1,000 for like 2 nights. And I woke up on the morning of my birthday, and I looked, and I had this thought land in my head, and it was, got at least the same again to go. How do you feel about that? I was like, Jesus, like don't wake me up to that thought, like same again, at least. And then the next thought was, well, if I meet my person now, let's assume there is a person, that's 42 years or more that I'm going to spend with them. I am so glad I haven't met them yet. And like this deepening levels of, wow, there are other things to experience in life other than success, whatever, inadvertent, in like bunny ears, whatever success is. And what else and what more? And to me, that is deepening levels of embodiment, right? Like less gut brain, less head brain, and more heart maybe, or just softening, or I don't really know, but it definitely feels like an invitation to me at this point.
Yep, makes sense.
I'm curious what is next for you, and whether whether anything.
I'm definitely drawn to fatherhood if that becomes possible. That's a priority for me. I'm already enjoying country living to some extent. I think being a bit closer to nature. I walk by the river next to my house every day. Country living. I'm debating a move to Slovenia. It's a bit more wholesome. I mean, the UK is decadent as a culture. It's in decline, and its values are screwed up. It's a mess. So yeah, looking at Slovenia as a slightly more wholesome location, a little bit closer to nature and closer to some real values. That's a possibility for me. Work-wise, I'm just ticking along, training coaches, and it's usually every 2 years I do something big and mad. So I'm sort of due for something this year, but it hasn't come yet. So I might have a year off doing mad things. We'll see.
Do you still practice Aikido?
No. There are a few Aikido dojos in the world where I could practice. I'm kind of a mega snob of Aikido. Like with anything, the more you do it, the more narrow your tastes become, like a wine taster that can only drink the best Bordeaux or something. So there's a few places I would train if I was there. Aikido was great for me for many years. I'm very grateful to Aikido and the Aikido community. Certainly some of the best people in my life and good influences on me, male and female teachers over the years, mentors, friends. No, I still do some martial arts. I still doing some boxing. There's different other martial arts I'm involved in. I still do. My embodied practice sort of shifts every few years. I tend to do a few years of something and then shift somewhere else. And then, there's things like meditation are consistent. I'm a better person if I dance once a week, so that's fairly consistent. I do something that looks a bit like yoga most days. I also go to the gym. Like part of the maturing, I think, in embodiment is you get less snobby in another way. So you get more specific around very particular embodied practices, like most yoga classes I can't go to. But then you also get more ordinary in another way. Like I just go to the gym and lift weights. I really enjoy it. And I used to hate the gym. I used to really look down on the gym. Now I love it.
I built a gym in my house because I am snobby as fuck. And I'm like, am I though? No, I just don't. It's that thing of like, I just don't like people. And I've got an aura or an energy around me that makes people come and talk to me. So I cannot go to the gym without getting some kind of nice tats or nice tits or like something. And I'm like, dude, leave me alone. I'm trying to like be with my body.
Yeah.
So to get over it, I built weights, but I have something at home, and it is my temple. I have a temple downstairs, which is flowers and plants and crystals and incense, and then I've got a temple upstairs, which is weights and kettlebells and ropes and is a place where I go to be with my body.
So I've always been a fan of practice. I guess as I got older, I used to be a real practice obsessive and really kind of practiced a lot and used to encourage that in my students, like aikido, meditation, other things. And now I say the 3 Ps: people, places, and practice. And I actually think practice is the least important. I think it's way more important where you are, which we have more or less choice in, more or less design in, depending on our luck. And then people, again, more or less choice depending on the situation. But like who we hang out with and where we hang out. And I think embodiment goes from like a yoga class you do once a week or once a day. It goes from that to something that's a bit more in your bones, and it's all embodied practice after a while.
I concur. I think that at the beginning, people are always asking for a ritual, a routine, a to-do, like, tell me how, like, what do I do? And I'm like, I can't even. They're like, what do you do? And I'm like, I live in my body, and if it needs something, I give it to it. Like it's you reach a certain point where it is not I have this set thing that I must do every day. Like,
for an hour I put on these special clothes and do this special. That kind of container is really helpful for people at first, but it's not ultimately necessary, I don't think.
No, it really, really isn't. What are your values?
Now, I don't think you should ask someone their values. Like, you should actually ask them, ask to see their bank statements and their diary. That's where you'll see people's real values, because it's like corporate values. If you just ask people, it's like, these corporations, values are this and this. Like, yeah, but how do you hire and fire?
Yeah.
So I think at the moment I'm really drawn to simplicity, ease. I want to be doing something meaningful that contributes, but at the same time not kind of crazy. I'm no longer looking to sort of do something that makes me known or beyond a comfortable living, makes loads of money. I'm just not interested in it. So something like, at the moment, something like simplicity. I've always really valued my freedom. I've always liked to kind of do the things I do. It'd be very difficult for me to have a job, I think, and be kind of told what to do. So yeah, there's some bullshit.
I get that. And I like, we agree on that kind of aspirational, operational thing, right? Like, it's all very well. Like, for me, the first time I ever did a values elicitation practice many, many years ago, it was like looking at them. Now I understand, with my autistic brain being like, what is the point of this? why have we just done this cerebral thing that everyone can go, yes, these are my values, but how are people going to measure that? How are they going to live it? How are they going to be it? Like, this is not. And so then I created the value filter, which is my signature tool, which is a way for people to, live their values and check in, like, am I inside it or outside it every day? And it does evolve. Like, so again, when people first do that practice with me, they want to get the words perfect because they're really important. And then after a while, they come to understand that it's a particular energy, right? It's a quality that we are relating to, not a word. And that word may change.
Yeah, certainly embodiment and that side of things is key. Another one I think is that values are in competition, and people don't want to accept this, is that you have to slit the throat of some things for other things to live. And like, what values really comes down to is you see people's choices, right? It's like, do you want to take the boring job with lots of money or the interesting job with money? Like, you can't have both jobs. And people go, yeah, but I want to do the job as part-time. And shut up, you've got to choose.
Every time somebody tells me I have no choice, really? I had to. Really? You had to. Did someone have a knife or a gun to your head? No, these are your values, right? The way that you make choices, particularly the ones that are in your blind spots, are your values.
Yeah, that's why I say, show me your bank balance, show me what you spend your money on, where you spend your time. People say, I love my family. I'm like, how often do you see them? Like, so, there's kind of key things. But learning's another big one for me. I'm always on courses, like, I'm on some great courses at the moment, always wanting to learn. I feel like if you're in this educational field and that's not a value, then there's kind of a problem, like, I mean, to a fault, right? Like, being with someone and going, okay, what's the learning experience here? And it's kind of like, it's not always the best question, actually. It's like, it's not always the thing that's needed. But for me, that's a very go-to as someone that's, from a family of teachers and devoted their life to learning.
I just want to say thank you for coming and having just a really open, honest, real, in the now conversation with me. It's been a real pleasure to have this conversation. And we are also going to do the Patron part, where I'm going to ask you maybe up to 15 really nosy questions. We'll see how we go with that.
I heard no one's done 10 before, so I'm getting competitive. I'm going to do 10.
The last person I had on got to my question number 10, but I missed one out so that we could get there. So we'll see. And I am like starting to change them up so that we can do different ones. Either way, we will do that together. If people want to come and find out more about you, find out about the books, the conferences, the course, all of that, where's the best place for them to come?
Yeah, other than Tinder, Grindr, no. So the best place is if you put the word embodiment into the internet, I come up. So Instagram, loads of stuff on there, like coaching sessions. I mean, you're doing 1 minute embodiment coaching. If you're like, what does this guy actually do? You can see there. Or YouTube, if you prefer. We have a podcast, the Embodiment Podcast, 500 plus episodes. So it's a huge library of resource for people. But our main thing is we train embodiment coaches, and the website is embodimentunlimited.com, embodimentunlimited.com. And again, there's loads of free stuff there that people can see as well. So lots of channels, but any of those will get you there.
Amazing. Again, just, what you have achieved, what you have put out there, has the capacity to last you forever. And too right that you want to slow down and back up, right? Like you have produced this incredible body of work. So
yeah, I mean, I'm just like some guy from a village whose dad was an alcoholic and whose mum was an administrator in a school. And it's like literally millions of people have listened to the podcast, the YouTube channel. I mean, the book sold a few thousand copies, which I'm told is good. We've probably had.
I think it is that. I think it is that, right? Like, it is the everyman, because it's the everyman that needs this stuff, right? So if it's good enough for you, it's good enough for them, right?
Yeah, I'm sort of already happy with kind of the kind of reach of things. So yeah, kind of slowing down, a bit more simple. So so I feel like I got a free therapy session as well at the same time, Ebony. So thank you.
Best compliment ever. Thank you very much. I will take it. I will put all of your links and all of the things in the show notes as well, so it's really easy for people to find and come and find you. Again, thank you for your time. I really appreciate it.
Boom. Thank you.